Hello everyone, and welcome back. In today's video I'm going to be giving my feedback and build on the new Necromancer Elite Specialization, the Scourge. I've been having so much fun with the Scourge. I must say, at first I had a little bit of difficulty getting my footing and seeing what the skills did. Because you're not transferred into a Shroud, you have 5 F skills, while just main Necromancer or Reaper just has 1 F skill, so personally, it took a little bit of muscle memory to get things going, but I've settled down, and I must say, the Scourge can pump out some amazing damage and some self-sustain and group support. This build will be trying to strike a balance between both damage and support, and so far it seems that it's working pretty well, especially with the new barrier mechanic. Very annoying at times if you're fighting against a barrier mancer, but very helpful if you have someone who applies lots of barrier on your own team. So let's just jump right in. For my weapons, I'm going to be taking dagger and torch, as well as the staff. I'm not taking scepter. I would take scepter in more of a PvE scenario, but considering that this is a PvP only, this one is a bit more useful for life force generation, which is the main focus for this build. The torch, just the new weapon, and provides some good Condi damage as well as a nice CC. And the staff being a really nice long-range support defensive style of weapon. For my sigils, I'm taking Sigil of Doom, Sigil of Smoldering for my dagger torch combination, Sigil of Exposure, and Sigil of Energy for the staff. And for the rune, I'm taking the Rune of Balthazar for more burning duration. And I've also been testing this build with 2 amulets. The first one is the Sage Amulet. This is if you are more condition focused, which this would work much better with the Scepter, but as I said previously, I'm focused more on life force, and I find it easier to generate life force with the dagger because it's auto attack. Also get a little bit of healing. The other amulet that I've been testing is the Mender's Amulet, which goes much better with the dagger because flat power as well as healing power, you get some really nice barrier. So I would say either or for this build, but right now I'm running with the Sage Amulet. Moving on to the specializations, I'm going to keep this up. I've decided on a new layout where you can see both at the same time. But I think because we've already covered this, let's just exit out and move to the specializations. So I'm taking Curses, Blood Magic, and the Scourge. Honestly, when the Scourge first came out, this was the specialization combo that I was gunning for, and it works really well. So for Curses, I am taking Plague Sending, I'm taking Terror, and Parasitic Contagion. Because I'm not taking the Scepter, I will not be taking Lingering Curses. Also, I wanted to mention that Terrifying Descent would be nice with in conjunction with Terror, because they both play into the fear mechanic. Moving on to Blood Magic, I'm taking Ritual of Life for fast revives, and now your Well of Blood will revive allies if any downed allies go into the Well of Blood. With this trait, it would probably be smart to take, just popped my heel skill, it's probably smart to take Well of Blood, but because I'm more focused on barrier and making sure that they don't go down, I'm taking Sand Flare instead. I've also been testing this with Blood Bond, but I think this would go much more smoothly in a PvE rating scenario because you're not constantly switching targets and it's not as hectic. Next, I'm taking Life from Death, and finally I'm taking Transfusion, good old Transfusion. I must say Vampiric Presence has always been weak, but especially with the Scourge, it's just, in my opinion, it's not necessarily worth taking. If you have like really bursty characters that do really fast attacks in a very short time frame, this could be more useful, but Life from Death just beats it in many different scenarios. Moving on to the Scourge of the main event, I'm taking Nourishing Rot, gain life force for every boon you remove or corrupt, and there's a lot of boon corruption with the new punishment skills. Fell Beacon is nice for more condition damage, and if you're running a pure condition damage build, I would definitely consider taking Fell Beacon. And for more support in the style of extra damage for your allies. Abrasive Grit is also really nice. Granting an ally a barrier removes conditions afflicting them and grants might. And especially with all the barrier mechanics going on with the Scourge, there is a lot of use for this trait. Next, I'm taking Desert Empowerment. Manifest Sandshade grants a barrier to allies near it. Again, you'll be seeing a lot of use out of Abrasive Grit. And finally, I'm taking Sand Savant, mostly for PvP. For PvE, I don't think I would take Sand Savant unless there's a rating counter where there's not too much movement. But for Sand Savant, you get a larger sand shade and its effects are increased. For PvP, because there's so much movement going on, I would rather have one thing to manage, and on top of managing all my cooldowns and my own shade abilities, it's just, for me, too much to handle. Demonic Lure is great if you want to keep your 3 sand shades and increase some of your condition damage. And Feed from Corruption is really great for self-sustain, because you'll just gain the boon whenever you rip it. So those are my specialization options and my trait choices. Moving on to the weapons. You guys know the dagger and you guys know the staff. Dagger is more damage and staff is a bit of combination of condition damage and some defensive support. But the new weapon, the Torch, a harrowing wave, unleash a wave of corrupted fire, burning and tormenting enemies. And this is where that Balthazar rune comes in. You get a little bit of increased burn duration. And also torment, nice. And Oppressive Collapse for a bit more support for your allies, granting them might. And also a really nice CC for knockdown. And this combos really well with Dark Pact. If you immobilize them, you can wait 2 seconds before you activate the skill, Oppressive Collapse, and they'll be immobilized and then knocked down. So it's 5 seconds of a CC just to do whatever you want to them. And it's really fun, especially if you immobilize them in your Sandshade. You can do crazy effects with them. So if we pop down the Sandshade, the new profession mechanic, because I'm taking the trait that increases the radius and only grants me 1 at a time, that's what it looks like. For the first ability, we have Nefarious Favor, which will corrupt 2 conditions on allies into boons. I use this skill quite often in PvP because with all the conditions floating around, you'll want to use it a lot. And because it's only on a 5-second cooldown, it's really useful. Next, I have Sand Cascade, which applies a barrier in an area to allies that are in the radius of the Sandshade, and of course to yourself, because all of these Sandshade abilities will also affect your own player character. So technically, if allies are near you, they'll also grant the effect. For the 4th skill, we have Garish Pillar, which is the AoE Fear, and also plays off of Transfusion. It will pulse the heal. It's not just a 1 stack of healing or revive credit. It is a pulsing mechanic, such like the base Death Shroud and Reaper Shroud. I'll pop this down again. And this is what the effect looks like. Skeletons, they just float up. I really like that effect. And for the final one, we have a Desert Shroud, which gives you a really strong barrier, 5,000, and also pulses Torment around you in an area, and it pulses 7 times, and at the end, it will get credit from Life from Death. I had questioned how Life from Death would work, and you technically do still get a Shroud. It just is a single effect instead of replacing 5 different skills. So those are the unique profession mechanics and skills. I will say that in a PvP scenario, I feel like in PvE this is not going to be as much of a problem. But sometimes I'll have trouble with generating life force to use these skills. But after a couple fights, you'll just store up your life force and it'll be much more, it'll be smoother sailing from there. So just as a pro tip, the first couple fights will be a bit more difficult because you don't have as much life force. Moving on to my utility choices, I'm taking Sand Flare, which is a moderate self-heal, and it also applies barrier and corrupts boons from enemies around you. I'm also taking Signet of Undeath, which is a slight remedy to my life force issue that I've been having. This will just passively generate more life force while you're in combat, and it also will revive 3 downed allies in an area. This is more PvE oriented, so if you're going to be taking this in raids and you just want to get a quick heal or revive off of some downed allies, this will be nice. In a PvP scenario, I'm just taking it for its passive effect. I've also really enjoyed taking Trail of Anguish for just like blitzing off in swiftness and then just making everybody's day terrible. It's really, really fun. So I'd also take Trail of Anguish. Next, I'm taking Desiccate, which is another remedy to my life force issue. This will generate 10 life force. I'm not too sure if it generates 10 life force per target you hit or if it's just a flat 10%. I'm going to go with the latter on that. But this will convert boons on enemies into Torment and Cripple, and also will grant allies Might, so some more support mechanics. And finally, I'm taking Serpent Siphon for the barrier mechanic. This will send out some serpents, and much like the Ventari tablet fragments and the Revenant staff healing mist orbs, these will be placed around the ground and allies will pick up the little glowing orbs of barrier, and I'll show this off. So this goes for anyone right here. If you see these on the ground and they are friendly, pick them up because they do great effects and they give you some more defense. I have noticed that some people don't pick it up, and I think it's just because this is a new mechanic, so they're not looking out for it. But if you see it, just try to pick it up. And finally, I'm taking Ghastly Breach for the slow, the Might Pulse, and the boon corruptions. This one is an extremely powerful skill, especially if you pop it on point and just let that skill go to work. And visually, it's really, really impressive. I like the symbols and the runes flying around and the overall effect. And the sand covering the ground. I like it. But that is my build. I do have some gameplay that I will be voicing over. And yeah, popping all skills. And I will see you guys over on the gameplay portion. So, see you then. Bye-bye. Hello everyone, and welcome to the gameplay portion of this video. I had in-game audio, but I was also playing Spotify in the background, so there was copyright music. It was Imagine Dragons' new album, Evolve. No, not sponsored, shout out, like they never sponsor me, but it's great. So there will be some basic Path of Fire music in the background. So here you'll see me on point. This is one of my earlier games, so I pretty much just was spamming buttons and trying to do something. And as you can see there, someone went down and I used my 4th skill, and I believe it was pulsing some heals. But one thing I'd like to mention is that for damage, I neglected to mention this in the build, so I thought it'd be nice to bring up here. But for some really nice bursty condition damage, what I like to do is I like to pop my shade down in the middle of a fight where there's lots of enemies, use my 5th skill, which is my Desert Shroud, which pulses Torment, and once that's almost over, I like to go in and finish off with my 4th skill, which is my Fear. And because the trait allows Fear to do damage, it just does a little bit of extra damage, which is nice to keep some pressure on them. So as the first fight, this second fight is, in my opinion, a little bit more balanced because I knew what I was doing. I send out some serpents to get some barrier. I didn't end up collecting any of them, but I was like, you know what, just as like a starter, I might as well. You could see me here knocking them down with my Torch 5, which is really nice. I have noticed that sometimes the animation for it will trigger twice, but nothing happens twice. I'm trying to keep some pressure on the enemy. And you can see here I use my healing skill, and I also combo with my F3, which is the barrier. So I basically get double barrier or 3/4 barrier. Definitely not half barrier. But continuing to use my serpents and trying to support my allies. Caught in a little bit of a difficult situation here, and I decided to just pop my 4th skill to get some more AoE support. The Mirage goes down here. Mirages are so pesky, teleport everywhere, you don't know which one's the real one. So, I mean, I guess it accomplishes the Spec's goal. But again, trying to keep my life force up to about full so I can use my Sand Shade abilities. And that Thief is about to go down here, and a very similar situation with the Necromancer, continuing to use my serpents to get more barrier. That time I ended up running into them, so I got some effect out of it and popping some more barrier. I used my ultimate on the center of the point just in case if anybody had any boons, they'd be corrupted. Got some more fear there. You might have seen some really nice spike condition damage, but in the case of using all my sand shroud abilities. And moving on to the next fight, we have this little bit, and I'm trying not to make these videos super long, so I believe this is the last fight that I will showcase. And I will be doing a video with a larger compilation of each elite spec, doing just PvP gameplay, but this is the last fight. And some more Tear and F4 and F5 combinations with Tear, and trying to keep regen on people. I also forgot to mention the regen on Mark of Blood is nice. So this is the end of the fight. We have won. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you liked the video. Liked it if you liked it. Subscribe for more Path of Fire content, more elite specs coming out. And leave a comment down below about how you feel about the Scourge. And that is my stat. And I felt very proud. So thank you everyone, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye everyone. Mwah.